So in the cleanse function, you have something called as a read database. So if you have a procedure or if you have a function written, which will give you a single output, single attribute output, or let's say these are 5 attributes. So single output means a single record with maximum 5 attributes. Then this particular read database can be utilized. So there are lots and lots of functionalities for cleanse function. This is utilized to standardize, because if you can go ahead into string function, then you will see all these things over here. So if you want to go ahead and convert a value, if you have to go ahead and check something, if it is available or not, if you have to go ahead and put up a default value, if you have to find out if that particular value is existing in the system, then you have to state that. So all those things are mix and merge of all the functions which are being given over here to us. And you can see over here, there are certain number of noise filters, and these noise filters are then utilized into company, I think geographic or company. Yeah. So these are cleanse lists which are being there, and these are the graph functions which utilize those cleanse list functions in them. And see, these are functions which are there. So if you go into CL City, CL City is over here. This is what CL City is. It's already giving you all these names. It's a list, right? So we don't go ahead and create anything new over here. If you go ahead and see my cleanse list, that was very simple. That it was just checking if the string is having test or not. If it's a test, then it was just replacing the test to example. That's it. It was just doing that. These are all you can say as or conditions. If you are finding this or that or that or that or in any of those match types, if you go ahead and edit this, you'll see either it's an exact match or a regular expression or a SQL match. So anything which is there, then you'll just state this particular value to a output string. You can replace that. Whereas description and registry ID, these two are graph function. Description, I'm just utilizing the date, updated date, that this particular description, it was just like a concatenation with a date which was being shifted. If the date is coming in a different format, I just have to go ahead and put up a format which I needed to convert. So anything, if I'll just go ahead and write. So let's say I'll just go ahead and write anything over here. And I just provide the date, any date, let's say over here 8. Okay. It will be converting this date to the day of the year, month, and year. So over here, capital double D's means the date of the year. Small d means the date of month or the so all these formats are as same as the format from why it didn't got changed. Let's see. right? So that is being done over here. It's a simple function which is there in string, which is concatenate. Then over here, I utilize a format date function, which is there in data conversion. So these things will come with experience, that which function we will be utilizing. Now in registry ID, there are various functions and conditions and all which I have utilized. So you can see I have utilized the read database, that registry ID in this particular table, this attribute, the data is shifted from over here. I'm releasing the cache, returning this attribute. If I'm finding the data or not, then accordingly, I'm sending the data or the error message. So how to create these, right? So if I'll go ahead and create the same function again, so what is the first thing which I always go ahead and do is I always split the entire function into a stepwise procedure, an algorithm, you can say. So what needs to be done? What needs to be checked? So if you go ahead and split your entire requirement into multiple steps, you can create any function over here. But the function's endpoint is it will go ahead and give you as many output as you want, but only single value for every output attribute. It does not have any idea about multiple values which will be coming in. It will only hold a single value. That's the limitation of cleanse function. Okay. Am I clear?
Yeah.
So let's say this particular registry ID part, what I did, what was the main requirement? The main requirement was if registry ID exists, then error, else pass, right? Correct. Always would be a requirement where there would be if not, then what? If it is, then what? Correct. If the condition is true, then what you have to send. If the condition is false, then what? Correct. This is what a requirement will end up with. So my requirement says if the registry IDs exist, then true. At true, the user should get an error stating XYZ, whatever the error we want to produce. If it is false, then let the data to pass and to get updated. Right? So for that, first step is to check if the data is or the value in that particular attribute. So for this one, we have two different ways to go ahead and put it, use it. So is this, we can go ahead and create a required attribute. If we create a required attribute in the provisioning tool directly, That means it will always have the attribute and I don't have to check that the value was there or not. If we are not going with that, then my first step becomes if this we are either going with required attribute or not, right? So if I'm going, let's say, without requirement, then first thing I have to check is string is empty, because empty checks your null, your length, if there is any white space only, which means it's empty. How we can go ahead and check that? You can see over here in the logic functions, there is a is string empty. Null or empty, which means its length is 0, not white space. Both the things are checked. So after checking, there would be two outcomes. There would be it can be true, which means it is null or empty. Null or length is basically 0. False means the data is there. Now this becomes my condition, right? So over here I have done in a different way, which is I took the above choice as required. So when there is any condition statements, there are two conditions, and according to the condition, I have to go ahead and do any kind of activity. Then there is always a condition which I have to use. So before going into condition, add a condition. So how this true and false I will be getting? I will be getting by formatting the Boolean value, because condition will only take string values. And this will send me a Boolean output. It does not send me a string output. So if you go over here, you can see a value is in Boolean, right? So I have to choose format Boolean. Then these values becomes my true and false. So if it is true, then I'll just go ahead, send an error stating value is empty, right? But if it is false, then I have to check or to read it in DB, because I need to check if it is existing or not. Right? So then I'll go ahead and read it in database using miscellaneous read database function. I'll send the table name, I'll send the attribute name, I'll send the data which is coming in. And then I'll be stating that, okay, you always go ahead and clear the cache before you go ahead and get me the value for that. And what will be my return column? If the record was found or not. So I'm just checking if it is exist or not. I don't want the value because the value is what I'm sending in. So I'll be good with a record found. But the other use case is if I have to go ahead and select any other value from that particular entity. So I can do that way as well.
Ajay,
Yeah.
like this cleanse function, it will directly update in the table for
No,
particular
no,
attribute,
no.
or
It will
no?
give you the value. So it's up to you if you are using in mapping. then it will go ahead, find that particular part, and it will update that particular value according to the cleanse function. If you are utilizing in provisioning tool, it will go ahead and set that particular value where the output is being mapped. So it doesn't store the value or it doesn't set the value. It will go
Mm-hmm.
ahead and find the value for you. Later on, it will go ahead. The other MDM process will help you in updating the value for that particular attribute. It's just main dependency or main identity is to standardize or to go ahead and do any kind of validation we want.
Validation means in a separate table,
No, no.
calling in the mapping, or yeah.
Validation, you can the function basically. So in ETL, we go ahead and create a expression function, right?
Ah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So expression function is what? We do multiple validations over there. We can go ahead and look up something. We can find if it is equal to, if we have to
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and concat something. So you can think this particular thing as an expression
Okay.
transformation. Okay. How do we create it? We can go ahead. First thing is we go ahead and create a group. So user library is something which we go ahead and create. Okay. Once we go ahead and create the user library, I just added a custom over there. I just added it name and just click OK. So this will be added. Then later on, we just go ahead and use graph function. Why? Because regular expression, you can see it over here as well. You have a function already. So basically there is no point in creating a regular expression function from cleanse functions. Either you go ahead and create a cleanse list or you create a graph function. So cleanse list will be look like this particular part. And you have to just go ahead and add what you need to search in a particular string and what you will be replacing the string with. Okay, with what type? So if you say regular expression and your string is, let's say, test, and let's say it would be test2. Okay, string is already present, so we'll just say xyz abc regular expression. Okay, and it will be. So what will be the regular expression? Pattern input is what will be the test string. So in the test search string, we'll put the regular expression. So right now I'm just using over here as A to Z. And over here I just say test. I think that is something dollar would do for anything which is there. A to C. Okay, these are big and I have to actually do a small one as well. You can see all of them are there, and I think that is with dollar. It is not with dollar slash dollar. I think not this one. I am forgetting what all things are there. My bad. For the entire word, was it just this parenthesis? So I'm not sure how it was. Anyways, so any type of pattern. So the search string will become the pattern, and the output string we'll get accordingly. Okay. If I'll go ahead and do a SQL match, I have to put a SQL statement over here, SQL string. So that is what it goes ahead and does for us. We can go ahead and import as well, but that will be imported by some database connection. Okay. Cleanse function, and the graph function will look like this, but in start it would be a input and a output. So basically the limitation is one value per output port. So you'll get this. So how to add any attribute in the input? Just double click or right click, edit, or edit from over here. Output the same way. Add a function over here and you'll see all the list over here. Whatever you want to go ahead and use, even the customs which you created, you can go ahead and utilize that same. So it would be a black box. You don't know what is inside. So it pretty much looks clean. You can use your own, you can utilize any function which is there. How to add a constant or over from over here. How to add condition over here or the last one. So in condition, when we add a condition, there would be case values. Over here, whatever we are writing. So let's say we were talking about true and false, right? So I'll just go ahead and say true. And I'll go ahead add a false. So you can see this one and this one, there is a difference. So one is having a bolded, so that's a default. So if any of the value which is coming other than true or false, it will go into true. So if we have to have a default, we'll say default, that becomes a value, and this is default. So what we have to do, if there is any other value, whatever the case values we are going with, then what will be over here? Any inputs or any change in outputs, we can go over here and we can edit and we can add more or less accordingly. If we have to add a function, condition, a condition inside a condition, we can add a condition as well. So it is something which you can do in a nested format. So there are a condition, and inside this condition, there is again a condition. This is the parent, this is the child, and this is the grandchild. So it is up to you how you want to go ahead and utilize the functionality. Just remember, it's all about logic and how you go ahead and distribute your entire function into steps. Your entire cleanse function depends on how you are stepping your problem into multiple steps. The only limitation, one value per output attribute. It does not hold multiple values. So wherever there is a multiple attribute output or multiple value per output you need, your cleanse function becomes unuseful. It is not at all useful for you. So in that situation, if you are using the validation for provisioning tool, basically for UI purpose, then your external calls and comes into play. If you want to utilize it for your batch, then your user exit comes into play. Or else you can use Java function library as well, which you have to create using over here. Then you have to select the file, parameters, library name, and so on and so on. That is how you will be adding a Java cleanse function. For adding a IDQ library, visual URL, service, and port. So your IDQ mappings can be published as a web service also. So this is for that particular purpose. So there are tons of requirements which comes in for cleanse functions. For standardization, for checking like this kind of functionality, this will be coming in for a lot of purpose. This error message, how it will be showcased to UI. Remember this particular output. So this output we'll be discussing when we'll be going with provisioning tool as well. That how that particular error will be showcased. We'll be seeing these things. Okay. So there is no hard and fast rule for this. This is all the way related with what your requirement is for standardization and what is the limitation. You can utilize n number of functions over here. So in the table name, I'm right now using the table name. You can utilize your SQL statement would be something like table name, your column. If you are going ahead and running a function, then select whatever attribute you'll be just going ahead and pushing, and the table name becomes your function name, or how you go ahead and run a function. You'll just utilize it for the same thing. It is something like select attribute name from table name where lookup column name equals to data. So it is select from where equals to where. There is no like over here. It's always an exact match. There is no function you can utilize, like we go ahead and do a max, right? You cannot utilize max, min, or any function. You cannot count. So those are certain number of things which is related over here. Okay. So there are multiple utilizations. Like in my earlier experience, I have done like this kind of functionality where plus certain number of standardization for genders or for status, which was coming different way from different sources. We standardize those. We utilize cleanse list for certain number of searching the strings into multiple places. If that was there, then we will replacing it. We had one particular requirement where we have to see if all the child records were present where the types were multiple different way. So I was actually going ahead and putting this where condition in a separate segments, like the type, selecting one type over at one place, other type at other rate database, and so on and so on. And every time I was using the record found, and then later on I was using the logic functions for other purposes to format them, and then I was using like other functionalities over here to go ahead and use to find out if these are and conditions, like the value was true for all the values, if the types were all there or not. If not, then that particular child record needs to be created. Those kind of requirements I have gone through and created. So it all depends on how we can go ahead and divide our problem into very simple, small questions. Okay. So this is what cleanse function is all about.
So Ajay, all whatever cleanse functions we are creating here or adding here, all these will be utilized in the mappings, or like this will be
These
added
can be
imputed.
utilized in mapping. So in the mapping, if I'll go ahead, let's say I just want to see if party ID was existing or not, right? So I can just go ahead, add a function over here. I'll just add the registry ID. Other than registry ID, it will go ahead and check for party ID. So for that particular purpose, I just go ahead and add it over here accordingly. So I'm just adding it in another attribute. You can just utilize this. So in this particular way, we go ahead and utilize the cleanse function for standardization purpose.
Okay.
We don't utilize for rejecting from the mapping, because if you reject from mapping, it will abort your data, abort your process. So we only standardize the data over here. We'd never go ahead and reject, because in cleanse function, you'll see rejections as well. In the miscellaneous reject. We never utilize that
Okay.
in the mapping. But we utilize this function for other purposes, like for the UI side. If you have to go ahead and reject some values. This is what all about cleanse function.